am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness. And today's show is the show that almost didn't make it. It has been a hassle and a half. And I am so glad that finally, I get to speak with my new friend, Danielle. She is truly a remarkable soul. We actually just had the opportunity to meet in person in real life this last weekend. So, it's been a wonderful experience to meet her in real life, to finally have this conversation, to bring her wealth of wisdom, her knowledge to all of you, because she has such an amazing story, and she could definitely help you live a more happy, healthy life in so many different ways. So without further ado, I would love to introduce to our stage, to our audience, Danielle Dupret. Welcome.
Hello. Yeah, it was so nice meeting you in person a couple of days ago, and thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your patience. For those that are watching, we had technical difficulties. I was sick, you name it, and she hung in there like a trooper, and here we are. So I just want to dive right into the conversation. I know a bit about you, but some of our audience may not, and I would love for you to share a bit about your journey, your story, and how you became who you are today.
Well, let's start with my accents because I noticed that people don't listen to what I have to say until they figure out where is she from. So, I'm from the French part of Switzerland. I grew up there. I was born there and spent my first 24 years in Switzerland. But I traveled to India, and that's where I practice English. And that's why my accent is not quite French. No, it's not Ukrainian either. It's a mixture of French and Indian. So no idea why it combined, but that's the way it is.
I
So
love that.
yeah, usually my workshop, that's what I start with because, eventually the question comes up, where are you from?
So what else? Now that we've got that settled, because you're
Yes,
right,
that's an
people won't
important.
listen. They'll be like, "What is that?"
So it seems I felt a calling to help people to alleviate suffering when I watched a documentary when I was 10 years old of doctors that were missionary in Africa, and they were doing some amazing things. So I decided I wanted to be a doctor, but my parents could not afford the lengthy study. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. And it's years and years of training. And in Switzerland, we don't have the same type of possibilities to become doctors with financial help. So I went into psychology. But at 15, I was diagnosed with skin cancer, had surgery every 6 months.
Wow.
And then the institute that was studying psychology was in Paris, and they were also teaching about nutrition. So they suggested maybe, check out nutrition, and I did. And I bought my first juicer when I was 18 years old, did a deep cleanse, and that did it for me. I think that was a lot of the toxins. I grew up with a lot of antibiotics, and I guess it was coming up one way or another. And cancer is a very tricky thing. Sometimes you can change one thing and the cancer goes away. Sometimes you have to change 98% of your life. So you need to stay alive until that's settled.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because, I mean, it seems like cancer is more rampant now than it used to be, and it could be so scary. But what I'm hearing from you is that there is hope, and it's not all chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, that people can actually take more control of their health by changing things in their lifestyle in order to help themselves get better.
Yeah, I believe that cancer has many different reasons to be there, but usually there is a toxic component. You have not been eating well, you have not taken care of yourself, and there is also an emotional component. And sometimes it's simply because you're not following your purpose, and the cancer is knocking at the door saying, "Hey, you're not supposed to be doing that." I had a great story about an attorney who had cancer, terminal cancer. And he said, my parents always wanted me to become an attorney, but I didn't want to be that. I wanted to go play the flute. I forgot if it was the flute or the violin up in the Alps, taking care of goats and sheep and cows way up there. And he decided to do that. He sold his practice and went up in the Alps and the cancer disappeared. So who knows?
Exactly. I often say I wonder how many people have cancer and cured themselves without ever finding out that they had cancer.
Apparently, we all have cancer cells, but the immune system takes care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you don't have cancer from one day to another. You have warning signals, and
Yeah.
it warns you, and then it warns you and gets louder and louder. You don't pay attention. All of a sudden, you get the big C diagnostic, and then you panic. But
Exactly. I read somewhere, and there's so many stories. I love that you bring up this idea of not following your purpose because one lady that I know of who cured her own cancer was she watched comedy movies. So she just laughed and laughed and laughed and was so much more happy and joyful, and it went away.
yeah, I heard about that too. And that's what I did when my kids got sick, which was not very often. But we put some great movie, some fun movie for kids, and they laughed themselves to being well again.
Exactly. There's definitely a psychology to that. And, what are we feeding our minds? What are we feeding our souls? It's not just what we feed our bodies. And I think that, if you speak to a therapist, the first thing they'll say if you're depressed is, well, stop watching the news, go on a news fast.
That's that's one of the first things to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that you work with energy, and for a lot of people it's kind of an elusive thing. It's kind of like electricity. We all use it, we all know it's there, but we don't really understand it. And I'm curious how you sort of morphed into from I mean, psychology, nutrition, and now it's like, and not saying that you don't do those or deal with those, work with those modalities at all. I'm just saying that now there's like the energy component. What's the story? Like, how did you go from, studies, from typical studies, to this?
I'm not even sure how it started. Uh, I was going. Let me see. I had a problem with my back, and it seems my ribs got out of place like every month or every other month,
Huh.
and it was excruciating. I could hardly breathe. I went to a chiropractor who would set them back, but for a while it was painful, and then it would come again, it was recurring, and he told me there is no exercise you can do. You just, again, learn to live with it. And then I went to see a friend of mine, a massage therapist, and again, my ribs had popped out of place. And she told me there is this lady has a, spooky type device, but maybe she can help you. And say, I don't work with devices, I want to do it just with your mind and nutrition. But I went to see this lady. And at the time, I was also having like an allergic reaction to water. It was very strange. So I asked her, let's work on that.
Mm-hmm.
But she also worked on my back. I didn't know. Went back to my friend, the massage therapist, and said, yeah, I came, but the pain is gone. And say, yeah, So I told a friend of mine about it and decided I'm going to buy that device and we'll see what happens. And that's when it was in 2002.
Oh, wow.
And that device, I don't know how it works, but it reads your consciousness. It reads your thoughts. And I had amazing results with it. So I dug more into that energy type of therapy. Then I learned craniosacral therapy, which is a type of massage to help my son. And again, it's about feeling the energy moving in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And then little by little, then I watch videos about what energy does and try to understand it, but I feel it, I sense it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of an intuition. I can, feel what the problem can be. But it's been year of practicing. And
Yeah.
then I work with homeopathy, and homeopathy works on energy too. You have to work with homeopathy. It's not like pharmaceutical that is just, you cannot really resist pharmaceutical. When they put you under for a surgery, there is nothing you can do. I tried to fight the anesthetic and I lost. But pharmaceutical kind of overpower you. As with homeopathy, you have to work with it.
That's really fascinating. At the event that we were at, for those that are watching, it was the Achieve Biz explosion conference, and I met somebody who was a medical intuitive, and of course my phone was listening, so now I've got ads on my phone on how to
Yeah.
practice to be a medical intuitive. But but it was fascinating to me because people are a little nervous around me because I have this weird ability to kind of sense when people are going to pass away, and there's something about the energy. I mean, it's energy; it's what it is,
Yeah.
and to just know that, and um, I can't really explain it except that it's an energy thing. I mean, because every thoughts are energy, feelings are energy. It's stronger. The energy is stronger the more we make it concrete in this like 3D world. But how important do you think our thoughts are?
Thoughts are energy, and they're very important. I don't remember who said that thoughts are things. They're just floating around, you know. So why are you attracting some? And to me,
Yeah.
you're attracting some thoughts, and you could be beside me at the same conference and attract different thoughts. And it
Mhm.
all comes from the beliefs and the programming that you have from birth or even before birth.
Yes, exactly. That's an interesting concept too, before birth, because a lot of us, I think that science is finally starting to catch up with things that have been known for eons.
Yeah.
And if energy is not created nor destroyed, then it didn't go anywhere. It's just changed form. So of course it's entirely possible that something happens
Who
before
knows?
we're born.
Well, they've made some scientific experiment on mothers who were in their third trimester of pregnancy in New York when 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
And their babies were born with a higher level of stress than
Hmm.
normal. So they already stressed out and reacting to stress more than a baby who had a mother that lived, in rural area without too much problem. So it's important to start, thinking about pregnant mothers, how they should be nurtured and kept from, stressful events.
You know, a lot of people don't even, they think it's as simple as no smoking, no drinking, make sure you eat your vegetables. But I think it still does come back down to how are we treating our body? I mean, your body is your baby's home.
Yes.
It's that environment. How's that environment? It's like, and if that it's all energy, I think too about how when people are you walk into a room and you walked in on like interrupted an important conversation. Of course the baby's gonna feel that.
Yes. Yeah, walking into a room, I attended a workshop and it was a big room and I was all happy and I walked into the room and felt like running away because the energy of fear was so strong in that room. I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And, I have food sensitivity too. I went to a bakery one time and had to get out. I was passing out because of the energy of the bread.
Wow, that's fascinating. I've never heard that before, and it makes perfect sense to me. So it
I
makes
don't, I was talking to somebody and I said, I don't like to go through the bread aisle. And he said, and I have problem going through the laundry aisle.
me too, because I'm allergic to the chemicals, the
Yep,
perfumes and dyes.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can learn to protect yourself, but you don't want to always be in protection. So
Yeah, and also if you can stay away from a toxin to your
it's
system,
better.
why wouldn't you do that? I never thought about it like that. That makes so much more sense to me, and why maybe it's not a good idea for me to go down the candy aisle.
Yeah,
Not because it's candy per se, but the sugar, me and sugar, the
yeah,
processed sugar are not good. I can eat all the fruit in the world and not have any issues, but processed sugar, no.
yep. I don't think processed sugar is good for anything or for anybody.
Definitely not. Back in the day when I was working in nutrition and in the gym and doing personal training as well, my idea was to set up a rehab, like a sugar rehab.
It's tough to detox from sugar. That's why I don't like to eat it. Because you go
Exactly.
through hell for like 3 days. You feel like climbing the wall and you need that sugar. So it's very addictive.
It is very addictive. If you need something to normalize, then there's a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what are some things about energy that you think that, I mean, basics, we're talking absolute basics, that you think that people misunderstand or should know more about?
Well, it's a basis of everything, really. When I do my workshop, I try to explain it that way. Most people know what an atom looks like, and it's just a model. It's not really like that. You know, you have the neutron and what's the other one? Anyway, you have
Proton?
proton, neutron in the center. You have the electron that are swirling all around, okay?
Mhm.
And usually atoms don't like to be alone, so they connect with other atoms. Like
Mhm.
water is H2O. You have two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen. So now you have a molecule. And
Mhm.
then molecules get together and eventually form a cell. And a cell get together and form an organ
Mhm.
or a bone or a muscle. So let's take the example of your liver. What is your liver? Your liver is made out of cells, which are made up of molecules, which are made out of atoms. And what do atoms do? They move around. That's an energy that keeps moving. And we know that a healthy liver vibrates differently from a sick liver. So we need to restore. The cells keep the memory of health. That's why we can work with that. But basically what we are a whole bunch of vibrations.
Mhm. We are a bunch of vibrations. A lot of people don't think about that. I mean, most people, well, maybe not most, but a lot of people realize at this point in life that what we consider an hard object, such as my cell phone, because I've got that sitting right there, is not actually. It's a bunch of things moving around.
Yes,
We are
exactly.
also that.
Yeah, and you know, people know when they move, like you were saying, going to a room, interrupting a conversation, or going in the laundry aisle, all of
Mhm.
a sudden you feel weak. Why?
Exactly. Exactly.
It's energy, so you feel it all the time. You don't pay attention to it. And then you go, you know, when I lived in Las Vegas, when I didn't feel too good, I used to go to the strip. Not anymore, that was years ago. But because the strip had happy people, and I would feed on the happiness of people. Now, you know, people are very happy if they win on the slot machines. You don't want to go to the restroom where somebody is crying because they lost their whole paycheck. But
Mm.
generally, if you go somewhere where people like are on vacation and enjoying their vacation, you're going to have positive energy.
Exactly. That's why it matters who we surround ourselves with.
Absolutely. Yep.
No, there's definitely a lot more to it than we give credit for. We do need to go to a commercial break, but when we come back, I want to continue this part of the conversation because there's this idea of energy and how can we sort of change our vibration when we say get in the cycle of the dumps or something's going on where that we really genuinely have a reason to not be happy, but we also don't want to live in that space. So
Uh,
when we come back, we're going to talk about ways that we can do that. We'll be back
all
in
right.
just a minute. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, I'm Julianne Meyer. You're watching On Your Wellness, and today's amazing guest is Danielle Dupret. Welcome back to the show. So excited to have you here today. I just love talking about all things energy because it is the basis. It is the basis for absolutely everything. And before we get into this idea of changing our vibration, you've written some books. You are like prolific in teaching, and I would love to talk a little bit about that because look at everyone who's watching. You have so many things that you're doing, the healing power. Oh my goodness, there's just so many things, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about, your inspiration and how it is that, these things can help people.
The healing power, I think, was the first one I wrote several years ago. Was about my journey into healing. And the orange thing there is about eat well. What is it? Eat well, feel well, or eat well, live well with energy, vitality, and focus. And it is not about a diet. It's about understanding the energy of food. I explained the energy of food, and some food has more or less energy. For instance, if you cook your food, it loses some of the energy, and organic food has more energy than just commercial food. And supplements also, if it's a whole food supplement, it has much more energy than the synthetic vitamins that don't do really much for our bodies. Then I did the CD, helping people to relax, go inside, and learn to feel the magic within themselves. And then when I work with people one on one, I go find the wisdom within them. The premise is that you know why you have a challenge, when it came, why, and especially what to do about it. So I'm pulling that information from your inner wisdom. And then the freedom mastery, it's a lot about the tapping techniques, because I have so many clients telling me, oh yeah, the tapping, I watch YouTube video, it doesn't work. I downloaded the book, it doesn't work. And yes, it's one of the techniques that works the best if you use it properly. I started studying when I was 15 years old. Psychology at the time was basically being on a psychologist couch, a psychoanalyst couch, week after week for months and years. And then maybe you got an idea why you have a problem. It doesn't solve it, you know why. And now, oftentimes in 1 hour, we can get rid of the problem. And we know that the talk therapy, some people like to talk about their problems, but if you talk about it, it just constantly make like a highway in your brain. And what you want to do is just cut off that highway, that mental, those neurons that work together, and stop that and reroute it so that trauma goes away. And it can often be done in one session. It's pretty amazing what we're coming up with.
That is amazing. And, that's like the perfect segue to my question because, we were talking before the commercial break about how you might have a reason. You might have a very legitimate reason. Your life could be crumbling down around you, but that does not mean that you want to be crumbling down with your life. And I'm not saying there isn't value in feeling your feelings or in ignoring them. I'm not advocating ignoring your feelings, but there are ways that you can work through them and let them go. And I'm curious, what are some techniques that you've used in order to help either yourself or clients with that? I mean, tapping, I'm assuming, is one of the number one.
Yeah, my other book there on PTSD, Yes, You Can Recover. One of the first thing I did after an enormous trauma was to dance Argentine tango. People don't realize Argentine tango is one of the best way to help yourself with PTSD and Parkinson's.
Really?
Yep.
Why Parkinson's?
I don't know, but they've done study on PTSD and Parkinson's and Argentine tango. You have to focus. It's not that simple to learn it. There's a lot of focus, and it does help these two things. You can go to a health food store and get some of the bacho back flowers. that
Mhm.
can help yourself. My mom had a tendency to be anxious, and she's just taking those little candy for anxiety called acute rescue. And what? And you can just, check their flyer and get the batch flower to help you. And it's not like you have to do anything. Sometimes you just so down you can't do anything.
Mhm.
But taking those little pills and put them under your tongue or some drops, it's amazing how they help. And you can do that. That gets you up again. You can do Qigong, you can do Tai Chi, yes, the tapping techniques. When you have a thought that doesn't want to leave you, one of the techniques you can do is take a bottle or your phone and pass it on from one side to the other. And a lot of people are thinking, I have such a great trauma and this
Yeah.
stupid technique's not going to help me. But what it does, it's getting the blood flowing and dissipating the thought that doesn't want to leave you.
Wow.
So simple. And I have, dozens of techniques like that. And yeah, people think, it has to be complicated because my trauma was so horrible. It's going to take me months or years at a therapist. No, it doesn't have to, but you have to apply these techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we overcomplicate for sure. We overcomplicate things and it seems like, oh, that's too easy. That would never work. But most of the time, it really is that easy. We just, first of all, you can't make as much money with passing a bottle back and forth.
No. Yeah.
So, I think that this idea of taking the path of least resistance is
And
really
I think
helpful.
awareness, become aware of your thoughts.
Yeah.
I give that example that happened to me when I was in Las Vegas. I had my 15-year-old daughter. Uh, she said, Mom, can you take me to Red Rock? Because I don't feel too good. I want to go for a walk. And my kids, I used to go up in nature. They go camp in the wilderness. Not a problem. I took her to Red Rock. She asked me to come pick her back up at 7 p.m. Went back home, and on my way to pick her up, the thought started, aren't you a crazy mother? Don't you know you're going to find a skeleton of your daughter a few years, down the line? I was going through the CSI Las Vegas, all the murders and everything. That's what we do. We catastrophize, we awfulize. And then I caught myself and said, wait a minute, I'm awfulizing. I don't know that's going to happen. I arrived there at 7. She was all happy, ready to go home. But we take a thought. A thought only lasts 90 seconds, apparently.
Hmm.
And the reason we keep having bad thought is we embroider on it and we add and we keep adding. And
Yep.
just doing that stops it. There's, other different techniques, but
I like that. It's like a pattern interrupter. Instead of focusing on that one thing that it's like a hamster wheel. And I know for me, I had this realization, and I'm sure there's people out there watching that have experienced this or will be like, oh crap, that's me. When I was younger, I was probably 17 or 18 years old, and I realized because, I had a lot of loss by that time. And, I had this realization that I was addicted to feeling sad. And I felt
yeah.
comfortable in it because I knew it so well. And as soon as I had that epiphany, that aha moment, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm creating this in my life.
Yep.
And life got a lot more happy after that. And it was a little scary for me in the beginning because I wasn't used to being happy anymore. I'd spent so much time learning to be sad and being stuck in grief and all of those negative, low vibration feelings that it took a long time. But I mean, maybe you have the answer to this, maybe you don't. I'm curious though, is how do you know the difference between honoring your feelings and letting them pass through you and just camping out and it being like overwhelming and overtaking you?
No,
How can
my mother passed away 4 months ago, and she was ready to go. So I thought I would just accept that. I
mm-hmm,
went through a grieving intensity. I was not ready for that intensity, and
mm,
I knew all kind of techniques. But I decided, grieving is part of the human story. That's what we go through in this life. I'm just going to let it go, because I know in the old days when somebody died, they would tear up their clothes, they put ashes on their head, and they had professional criers that helped them cry it out. So I
Hmm.
decided, they did that for 30 days. I'm going to do that. I'm just not going to use any of my therapies, go through that intense grieving process and see what it's like, experience it for myself. And I did, and it lasted about 3.5 weeks. Then the intensity diminished, and yeah, I still have waves of grief coming up, but it's so important. And yes, I was grieving and crying, and I went into the wilderness, and I was so angry that she left me, and it's not possible. I used to talk with her every Sunday. She was losing her short term memory, but she had gained so much in wisdom. It was amazing. Every time I had a problem, she knew how to comfort me, and now she was not there. She abandoned me, and kind of dissipated. So the grieving was intense, but in some way was also liberating. And I've had clients who experienced death, and especially one death of a child, and immediately started to take Prozac or
Mm.
any kind of something to numb her feeling. 25 years later, she was still talking about the death of her child like it had happened a few days ago. She never went through that grieving process, which is intense, but
Yes.
it's necessary in our human condition. But 3 months down the line, you don't want to be there. There is a process. So you got the shock, you get angry, you have the denial, the grieving, and eventually you go into what we call the desert stage, where, okay, you accept, but, and you can go into depression and stay there, wander in that wilderness, or you can come out of it and see the positive, maybe the gifts you got from that grieving, and then transform your life. I like the word transformation. I write it transform action. Trans is going beyond the form, that's where you at, through action.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. And I love that you shared this idea of actually feeling your feelings because I think a lot of people, myself included, it's so scary to
Yeah.
allow that intensity. It's like, will it even pass? And to go there, but it really is the way through.
Exactly. Years ago, I was taking a workshop and with medical doctors, and I was telling one of them, I know I'm not going to cry because I wouldn't stop. And he looked at me and said, the bucket of tears has an end.
Mm.
And I remember going home and I started to cry, and I cried for 3 days, and then it stopped. Then later on, I felt sad again. So I don't want to go through that process again. But within a couple of minutes, it was over because I didn't have the bucket. I just cried for whatever was happening at the time.
Yes, exactly. And I did that too for many, many years because it was like, and I could feel this grief. I called it a grief bubble, like a grief ball. I could feel it coming up and I would push it back down. And,
Yeah.
if you
And
just,
sometimes if I feel I need a cry, but I can't,
mhm.
I'm going to listen to some music that's going to bring the tears, or watch a movie. I know some
Uh-huh,
movies going to make me cry. And you
exactly.
need to liberate these tears because they
Yes.
contain chemicals that will affect you physically if you don't cry them out.
It's definitely a release too, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, but if you let the tears dry on your cheeks, there's something in them that makes you sleepy. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, so it
Okay.
will actually give you a nap or a rest or like that sense of calmness. It
Yeah.
actually does that if you let some of those tears
And
dry
they
up.
check the chemicals in tears, depending if you have tears of grief or anger, they
Uh-huh.
have different chemicals.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I actually I didn't know that, but to me, that's just so obvious now that you say
Yeah.
it. Because, I mean, I just think about even water. Oh, that reminds me, there was something I wanted to touch on. Um, when you said you had developed like an allergy to water, you're mostly water. So I'm wondering, was there some sort of thoughts that maybe perpetuated that or? Was there, I mean, how were you able to move through that in your life?
Well, that was with that device that I mentioned earlier. For some reason, I didn't have to do past life or whatever, but
Mhm.
it was something that was held in my consciousness.
Wow. So it just, you don't necessarily know how it worked, it just worked.
It just work, yeah. And people, talk about past life. I like also to talk about genetic programming.
Mm.
And I used to do some exchange with a woman who was really into past life. It was a lot of fun to do it. I didn't believe in that until a client of mine who could not lose weight, she had done everything diet-wise, exercise-wise, didn't work.
Hmm.
And we did a session of what we call interactive guided imagery. Just let's see where that leads us. She went back like 3 centuries ago. She was in Europe with her family, and they were going to come to America with a boat. And she was starving for like the 6 weeks they were going across the Atlantic Ocean. And
Mm.
apparently, that feeling of starvation was still in her DNA. Once we dealt with that, then she was able to lose her weight.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. And, for those that are watching aren't aware, we do. I mean, there's actual proof about how we pass down generations like pain and trauma. So sometimes I don't know about you, Danielle, but sometimes I've had thoughts, feelings, emotions that aren't mine. And I am
Yes.
so aware that they are not mine, but I'm experiencing them.
I tell people, if your great grandmother had fits of anger and she didn't deal with it, all
Mhm.
of a sudden you can have a fit of anger. You have no clue where it comes from.
Exactly, exactly. So we do need to go to one more commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. I think it's really fascinating how science is finally catching up to the things that we've been talking about that are a little more Eastern or woo woo. It's not actually.
Yeah, I say it's woo-woo stuff, but I learned them from medical doctors who were seeking different answers.
Exactly, exactly. And we're going to talk a little bit more about maybe trying some of these things because I think that we sell ourselves short if we're not open to other possibilities that are a little less invasive. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. We'll be back
All
in
right.
just a minute. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, I'm Julianne Meyer. You're watching On Your Wellness, and let's bring our guest, Danielle Debret, back to the stage. Welcome, welcome.
Hello again.
So, we've been talking about like these ideas that are maybe a little bit different. to some people. I mean, to you and me, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, it's been there for way longer than Western medicine. These are not new concepts. They're just not necessarily known to like our population, especially the on North America. You know, like Canada, United States, a little bit more on the eastern side, or in Europe, it's a little bit more accepted in some respects, but also they're super close minded too. So I'm just curious. You know, you said that you tried this machine, for example, that you didn't believe in, or you've done past life stuff that you didn't necessarily. What was the catalyst for you to be open enough to actually try it and give it a chance to see what might happen?
Well, I had some experiences when I was a teenager, and I used to do astral projection, astral travel, and I thought everybody was doing that. I learned in my 20s that no, that's not the case. And so I kind of had a knowing that there was something more than what we see. And if you look at science like medicine, we understand about 5% of our physiology. They keep discovering new things. They even found a new bone a few years ago.
Well,
So they understand 5% of physiology, and they give you drugs, medication that they haven't really tested on the 5% that they understand, but they don't understand the other 95%. So they don't know as much as we think they know. And I think it has been suppressed. That's not that people don't know, but it has been suppressed a lot.
you know, I think that that's a good distinction to make because there are a lot of things we are not told, or even, you know, just like the idea of the food pyramid that was paid for by the dairy industry, you know. Of course, dairy was like one of the things you're supposed to, when we find out that most people have a sensitivity, an allergy to like cow's milk, for example. So, you know, it's kind of fascinating how we take things for face value without even figuring out where it came from, why it's there. I mean, what's going to make somebody more money? A pill that's going to just sort of eliminate one symptom, or actually healing you?
And
And
the pill that's going to maybe cure one symptom is going to bring on another one, which means, I had knee surgery when I was 13. And I know they give me a little pill for like a painkiller after the surgery, and a big pill for my stomach to be able to handle the little pill. So,
exactly.
I mean, I'm not against the pharmaceutical because sometimes we need it, but I
Hmm.
think it's way overused. It's great when you have a broken leg, you go to the hospital, they mend you, they give you painkiller,
Hmm.
but it's a chronic disease that we don't really understand, or that the medical does not understand. Just try this pill, try that pill, try this, try that.
Hmm.
But maybe we need to get to the source about why you have that.
Exactly. And to me, it's very fascinating how we take for grant, or we take whoever, the white coat, for example, whoever's wearing the white coat, they must know more than we do. Meanwhile, we live inside our bodies, and we will listen to somebody outside of us who doesn't live in here, isn't experiencing, and
Yeah.
probably isn't even listening to what we're telling them because they don't necessarily have the time. It's the way the medical model is set up, especially in the United States. But why are we listening to them over our own intuition and our own knowingness? And so I've
Because
always found that
programmed. We've
interesting.
been programmed like that. When can you miss school or work?
Yeah.
When you have a medical prescriptions, you have to be sick. You cannot tell your boss, hey, I don't feel well. I think I'm going to take a wellness day and recover. That
Yeah.
doesn't fly.
No,
So
it
from
definitely.
childhood, from going to school, and isn't it easier to tell somebody, I have a headache, I'm not going to come to the party, instead of saying, your party sucks, I don't want to come. It's like, nah, I have a headache.
You know, I've noticed that I've been guilty of doing that. I've gotten way better at it because um it kind of saves, like, I've even practiced saying I just don't feel like going. And most people don't let that go.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
convince me, or, or if I say I don't drink, oh, just one.
Yeah, I don't drink. Say, why? I
Yeah.
remember I was 16 years old and somebody offered me a cigarette and say I don't like it. And she asked me, well, did you ever smoke? Say, no. Say, well, how do you know you don't like it? Say, okay, give me the cigarette. I took 2 puffs, say I don't like it. Now I have the experience.
Exactly. Well, it's just interesting because it goes back down to that programming that you were just mentioning. Is we just take things for granted. I'm so guilty of it, and I'm definitely more aware than a lot of people, but because I practice,
Yeah.
it's taken a
And like,
long time.
first comes awareness. You're
Hmm.
aware that something may not be right. Then comes willingness. Are you willing to do something about it, or are you just going to live like that?
Yeah,
And a lot of time, I think people just don't know there is something they can do. And that's when I come in with the tools, techniques, and strategies. Then you have to take action, and then you have success. So
absolutely.
awareness, willingness, tools and techniques, action leads to results and success.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, we've talked a little bit about some of your offerings like books, but we didn't really touch on coaching. What does that look like with you? I know you've sort of touched on it through a few different comments that you've made, but there's people out there that are watching that are like, "Oh my gosh, she's the answer I've been looking for, and I want to know more." So, I would really love to share a little bit of that because I think we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about that.
I like to know what the problem is first. So we have a conversation, can last 20 minutes, even an hour, to see where you at and for me to feel whether I can help you or not. And then I usually get a sense of how many sessions it will take. Then we make appointments, and I have so many different techniques. I've been in the field since I was 15 years old, learning different techniques. So my favorite one is interactive guided imagery. One I really like, and it's kind of a woo-woo thing that works amazingly well, is we imagine going into an alternate reality, an alternate universe where it's already resolved.
Mm,
And we dialogue with that part, with that alter ego that has resolved that. And
yeah.
I like to dialogue with challenges. I dialogue with tumors. I dialogue with your immune system. Again, the wisdom is inside of you. It's in subconsciously, what you have and you know what to do. And my job is to pull it out, and it doesn't take very long. If you are willing to really get rid of whatever problem or challenge or, even business challenges. I started working with medical doctor in 95. They took care of the disease and I took care of the emotions.
Mm.
But I also then moved into the business field, and I had somebody who was stagnating in his business. He would start a business, it stagnated, start another one, stagnated, and found out that he was addicted and, was addicted to pornography. And he
Mm.
was punishing himself by not being able to move forward until it was just too much. And he needed to figure out, he didn't know, but his subconscious mind knew.
There's something that you said in there that I really want to highlight and point out to those that are watching that might have missed it, is that we have the answers inside of us. And something that I like is that you're not trying to say, I have the answers. You have to, you're saying you have the answers. I'm going to help you find them, because it's like you can't see the label if you're inside the bottle.
Exactly. That's a good point. And a fish doesn't realize that they're swimming in water. You have to be external
Exactly.
to the aquarium to see it. So,
Exactly.
I've learned hypnosis too, but hypnosis is more about directing and commanding your body, your mind to do something. With interactive guided imagery, I'm asking your mind, I'm asking the question, it comes from you. And instead of me giving you a diet to follow, if the wisdom comes from you that says, you should stop drinking so much coffee, you're more likely to follow that than it's me telling you.
Exactly. Nobody likes to be told what to do.
Nope.
That's I don't care how old you are. Nobody wants somebody.
You still have that toddler that says no.
I have that toddler inside of me that's so defiant that even when
Yeah.
I tell myself that it's time to go to bed, I'm like, nope.
Yep, exactly. And the teenage, you still have the teenage of you that challenges everything.
Exactly. Oh yes, I have all those ages wrapped into one. And they do like to come out on a regular basis.
Exactly.
It's okay though if you can be aware of it. Bringing back that word
And
awareness.
you just dialogue. You don't want to judge. People judge we have bad
Exactly.
thoughts. Don't judge. Where does a thought come from? One of my clients was a 50-year-old woman, and all of a sudden her 5-year-old showed up. And she had the 5-year-old dialogue and
Yeah.
talk. So I had to change the way I was speaking with her, and we had to grow. She had a trauma at 5 years old. So we grew that part of her
Hmm.
to be 50, showing her that, things were okay.
I think that that's a really good point too, is this not judging, because those parts of us that we judge bad, they just want to be heard. And
Yes.
if
You
you,
know, I talk about the toxic positivity movement because if you want to show that you're all happy, everything is fine on the outside, but you are hurting on the inside, it doesn't work. I used to be with a group of women, and it was Christmas. Several of these women had been my clients. I knew the stresses they had. And I asked, okay, this is Christmas. What kind of stress do you have? Oh, we
Mhm.
don't have any stress. This is Jesus' birth. Everything is wonderful. How in the world you want to? I can't work with that. Is that if everything is wonderful?
Yeah.
What's underneath? Let's get rid of that, and then you can be all happy inside and outside.
I love that. I love that. That's very important. And I hate to say this, but we are almost out of time. We only have about a minute left. Is there any final thoughts that you'd love to share with the audience? Either something you've shared already or something that you just want to leave them
I would say never give up, but don't wait till it's almost too late.
with? Ooh, I love that. I love that. I think that that is very profound and very well said. Danielle, I'm going to leave it like that because that's like, if I had a free microphone, I would drop it. But
Okay.
I'm using my microphone. So, but anyway, that is all the time that we have for today, everyone. Danielle, thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you. It was wonderful.
Truly appreciate you being here and having the patience. And and for everybody who's watching, thank you for being here as well. We will be back again next week on Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your week, and until then, bye for now.